Project Access for All, the podcast. Interviews and stories about issues, organizations, and people working to create access and inclusion for people with disabilities. Everyone should be welcome everywhere. Here's Project Access host Alvaro Gutierrez.
Hello and welcome to Project Access for All. Today we have us Albert Rizzi, who is the President and CEO of My Blind Spot. Thank you, Albert, for being with us.
Thank you for having me today, Alvaro. How are you doing?
Very well, my friend.
And Mr. Magoo is doing well, too?
Mr. Magoo, for our listeners, Kane is doing very well. Thank you so much.
Good.
The listeners that don't know about you, can you tell us a little bit about your life?
Oh, sure. Well, I grew up in New York, on Long Island, and about 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with what was supposed to be a sinus infection, and it turned out to be meningitis. And at that time, I became very ill, was in the hospital for 2 months, and wound up waking from those 2 months in the hospital completely blind. So I started living my life as a blind person in January of 2006, and have an interesting perspective on sight and vision from both sides of the fence, so to speak. And it's been an interesting journey. I find that it's been a significant blessing in so many ways. And I have come to appreciate this new way that I see. And I still believe I see, and I've never seen more clearly in my entire life than I have as a blind person. It always amazes me to think that when growing up, I would tell my father, I could do that with my eyes closed. That's how we would define whether we were successful at one of our tasks or projects. And then when we look to a higher power, whether you believe in God or the forces of nature, we believe that they exist blindly. So they call that blind faith. And then when we want to find that one person to spend the rest of our lives with, in sickness and in health, till death do us part, we want to trust them blindly. That's called blind trust. And then when the proverbial stuff hits the fan, and we're expected to go to the courts to have justice doled out, Lady Justice is wearing a blindfold, hence blind justice. So seeing is not believing. Believing is seeing. We see the truth with all of our other senses, but not our sight. So being able to do things with my eyes closed, having blind faith, having blind trust, and always looking for blind justice has helped me to really embrace and appreciate my blindness and the way I see. So I don't understand why so many sighted people are so afraid of it or so traumatized by it, but while it's not for the faint of heart, it's not all that bad.
That's a great message to our listeners, Albert. And we would like to know when and why you decided to create My Blind Spot.
Oh, my goodness. Well, as many people from the community will attest, it's bad enough running into the physical walls as a blind person when you can't see them. But when I lost my eyesight, I started running into virtual walls, websites and software programs that I was able to use with my eyesight were now blocked to me and closed off. Basically, they were disabled, not me. I was still very able-bodied and still very desirous of wanting to access the same level of usability and functionality in the programs and the websites I had visited, but couldn't. So wanting to get back to work and understanding some of the websites did not allow me to use my screen reader to apply for jobs, I started seeing a consistent theme that was blocking the forward progression and employment opportunities for our community. So my blind spot was born out of frustration and a passion to right this tremendous injustice as I see it. And from there, that was in 2008, 2009, so just 2.5, 3 years into being blind, I started to become a champion for accessibility and an advocate for equal access. And at My Blind Spot, we believe access to the right tools promotes ability and restores infinite possibilities. And that's a universal truth, Alvaro. If we all have access to the tools we need to succeed, anything is possible. So from that impetus, I set out to develop a team of people. And right now we have 12 people that we work with across the United States, 12 different entities. Some of them are contracted companies. We've worked internationally from India to London with colleagues and our network to promote accessibility. And one of the things we focused on immediately was working to make QuickBooks accessible. QuickBooks is the premier leading accounting software program in the country and is used very much in Canada and in the UK as well. So, I can't be a successful business owner without managing our finances. And that's true for anybody. And in the States here, a lot of the counselors and the commissions for the blind and the departments for the blind and the VOC rehab centers tend to suggest or drive the blind community and the disabled community overall into their own small businesses. But the blind and visually impaired community were at a serious disadvantage because there were no accounting software programs that were accessible or usable to us. And as I've said, and I feel strongly about, you can't succeed in business unless you manage the financial integrity of your organization. So we've done that. And for the past 3 or 4 years, we've been working with Intuit, the manufacturers of QuickBooks, and are currently refining and testing some of the scripting solutions that we need to use in order to bridge the digital divide that still exists in this 25-year-old dinosaur that was basically custom-built pre-MSA, pre-Microsoft, pre-ADA, and we've had wonderful successes. And we've got hundreds of people using the program. We are now partnering with the Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind in D.C. to do some training programs in QuickBooks and are in dialogue with colleagues and different departments in California, state of California, to try and put together trainings that'll help people learn how to use QuickBooks so they can pursue careers in accounting, bookkeeping, or manage their own small businesses. It's very exciting.
Very exciting indeed. And this software is used on a Windows PC. Tell us about that.
Yeah, right now, My Blind Spot is working with the PC. 80% of the market, the corporate America, still uses the PC. We can speak very directly to the usability and accessibility that we've been able to introduce into the desktop program. And anybody interested in learning more about the direction that Intuit is taking their other product lines, namely QuickBooks Online, which is a cloud-based program, Quicken, Mint.com, TurboTax, can write to me, Albert at myblindspot.org, or you could visit our website, which is www.myblindspot.org. And we can put you in touch with our contacts and our people at Intuit to help you get the answers to the questions that you're looking for.
This program works with something like text.
Um, no, well, when you say text, the program itself, QuickBooks, interfaces with all of the screen readers that are out on the market. Right now, it works with JAWS and NVDA, and we are now working very closely with AI Squared to make sure that Window Eyes is able to interface as well. And currently, people who have Window Eyes and Microsoft, I think it's Microsoft 10 or better, are able to access the scripting solutions that are built into the program for Window Eyes. But anybody wanting to use JAWS would have to contact us at My Blind Spot to secure the scripts that we have, which are included in the user's guides that we provide that are all blind-centric and for people who use screen readers, as well as a suite of virtual lessons that we've developed and have been designed by our in-house QuickBooks guru, Richard Kelly, who is also blind and who has also been using QuickBooks since 1989 with some degree of success due to a significant number of workarounds. So Richard has seen the progression from inaccessibility to really seriously improved functionality that has impressed him and has given him new hopes and insights to what's possible in accounting again.
That is very exciting. If I am correct for listeners, I think I heard something related to some text working with Windows I, like conjunction or something like that.
Say that again? You're saying that it works with...
That
I'm sorry.
some text was working with Windows eyes. Like,
oh yes, we QuickBooks does work with Window Eyes, and we're currently testing some of the solutions that were created by the team at AI Squared, and we'll probably have some really impressive functionality improvements with the way Window Eyes works with QuickBooks in the next couple of months.
very, very interesting. And for listeners, when you go to myblindspot.org, you get inspired right away by the way everything is written about the importance of acceptance, of
You flatter me. Thank you so much for coming from you with the audience you have. That means a lot to me.
well, it's true, Albert, and I want to ask you why, for our listeners, it's so important to fight against discrimination, against thinking that we don't deserve access to all.
Oh, Alvaro, if I could just wave a magic wand to get people to understand that all of the problems in the world, not just how blind people move through the world, would be easily solved. For decades, for millennia, the blind community has been set aside. We've been not taken seriously because I think, again, going back to the reasons I'm comfortable being blind and the things that I see we all strive for as sighted people with blind faith, blind trust, and blind justice. The reverse is true for people when they look at blindness from a perspective of fear. Fear is a very crippling condition. And as Franklin Delano Roosevelt once said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And I think our community, the blind and visually impaired community, have been traditionally and generationally led to believe and accept a lower expectation for themselves because society puts one upon us. And we accept the label that being blind, or the understanding that being blind limits our ability. And I don't see the reason to accept that. But we have a social paradigm that needs to shift, not only within the sighted community as they embrace diversity and ability, but on the side of our blind community to empower themselves to use the laws that are present all over the world and argue the position that they deserve access from a consumer driven perspective. Everything and every conversation that I have had with organizations that we are working with, which by the way includes Morgan Stanley, Cablevision, which is an internet provider here, internet cable provider here in New York, a different state and municipality offices, have to do with the fact that I am an end user. I am a consumer. I am a stakeholder. I'm a shareholder in a lot of these companies. And when we go to a corporation or an entity saying, I spend my money here and I want to be treated equally, it becomes it actually allows the organization to hear us and say, hey, we have a consumer base here that does deserve to pay their bill. And if they want to provide the services, the websites and all of these offerings should be seamless enough for us to track our payments and stay on top of things, much like our sighted peers. And I think one of the things that we need to understand as a community is we need to look past the blind-centric focus of I need this to work for me because I'm blind, and embrace the fact that as blind people, we are print disabled, but not all print disabled people are blind. People with traumatic brain injuries are print disabled. People with mobility issues, veterans from war, missing arms, or people with Parkinson's disease, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, all have mobility issues. They are print disabled. They can't use the keyboard and the mouse. Then you've got people who, of course, the visually impaired, deaf, and people with speech impediments. But in the United States, 1/3 of all corporate executives are dyslexic, a learning disability. They're print disabled. And all of the programmatic codings that go into a website, a software program, or anything virtual will serve a diverse population of people into probably 30 to 40, 50 million in the state alone that use screen readers, magnifiers, voice-to-text tools like Dragon Speaks, and Braille display. If we look at the larger community of people impacted and denied virtual access, we wind up having a consumer base with discretionary funds and the money behind us to demand and negotiate an understanding and appreciation for accessibility.
Now, I want to go deeper in the accessibility regarding websites, also regarding mobile applications. I have this comment, listeners, and for you. How can we make sure that Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, etc., big ones in social media and in companies in general, in websites and in mobile applications, have a standard for accessibility that they don't lose? And my comment goes because of this. As you know, iOS 8, the operating system for Apple products on tablets and mobile phones, was released in September. iOS 7, the version before that, was in general very, very good. But iOS 8 had many issues. Some have been fixed, some haven't been fixed, has improved, but it has taken 7 months. Was a friend who's an expert in mobile devices telling me that he was disappointed. Why? Because for me, for you, and for everybody, when a new version of an operating system comes along, it should have access for all, not any box for people like us, and for people who are sighted, be perfect. Because not, you know what I mean?
Well, yes, but we're at an interesting time in history. It's interesting how for hundreds of years blind people were shut out, and now we're here, and now we have access to technologies, and it's great that we're upset. It's great that we're able to say, "Hey, something changed." It's We also need to appreciate the significant advancements and the significant efforts put forth by Apple. Um, One of the things I've come to appreciate with regard to technologies after working with Intuit is technology firms tend to put product out on the market to get them in the hands of people. Even after some testing, some of these glitches get through, and it's up to us as the consumers to draw this to their attention. So, to that end, when you run into an app or you run into a glitch in a website, go to the bottom of the website where it says, any issues, contact the webmaster. Draw it to people's attention. I have been doing that ever since I've noticed the significant improvements to the U.S. government's websites. And some of the response times I've gotten to correct issues are ridiculous. I'm talking 30 minutes and they've corrected it. I'm so impressed with that. But again, it's harnessing our voice and working together to point out things in a positive way rather than I've always see on these chat lists that I belong to. I'm going to sue. I'm going to. Isn't this a violation of the law? Well, yes. I think we need to become cognizant and very versed in the various laws that govern wherever we live as it relates to virtual access. We need to, again, use our voice to qualify and quantify our community as a market base. But there are standards and protocols out there. The W3C best practices for web development are probably the best to go by. There aren't, to the best of my knowledge, standard approaches to app development, and I think that's one thing that we are trying to discuss. My blind spot was a founding member, is a founding member of the International Association for Accessibility Professionals. The IAAP is a consortium of huge corporations, global giants like Adobe, like Microsoft, like Disney, like IBM, Barclays Bank, and we all come together to try and find some consensus on how to qualify and quantify the profession of accessibility, how to introduce accessibility into courses at university and colleges so we can educate professionals and also come up with practices that can be quote unquote standardized with the understanding that technologies change every 15 minutes. So it's always a catch 22 to create a standard that's usually outdated a week from the day it's written.
That is wonderful to learn about, Albert. And for our listeners, just to be very clear, obviously Apple has led the way in many, many ways, and I love my iPhone.
Me too.
For me, it's very important that as Albert, there is a standard understanding that if we are creating accessibility, it has to stay in. It cannot go backwards because then, as I was saying before, we are not progressing. You cannot have an app accessible and then a year later, oh my God, things that are accessible now are not accessible.
But I think we own that responsibility to let Apple and Verizon, all of these entities, all of these companies know that because accessibility can just because they've worked to make something accessible doesn't they're human doesn't mean there isn't going to be an instance where a programmer or an engineer is going to forget to add a specific number to a string of code that would break the usability of that specific field we're looking to use. But it can be easily corrected when it is pointed out in sharing manner rather than a threat of litigation. At my blind spot, we try to reduce the risk of litigation by pointing out the simplicity with which these corrections can be made, and they are very simple. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a technician. I don't really know much about anything when it comes to programming or setting softwares to work. I just know when they don't work. I am a consumer. When my product is broken, I'm an unhappy camper.
To add up to what Albert is saying, I recommend that we all do that. Something is broken, let them know. Care about accessibility.
Well,
So,
Alvaro, I would also, in case some people are just not comfortable using their voice alone, please write to me, Albert at myblindspot.org. And if there is a possibility that I can confirm and qualify some of the issues you're experiencing, maybe we could join forces and have our voices work together to reach out to these organizations, provided we have all of the contacts we need, to point it out to them.
very well said, Albert. And for our listeners, the email of accessibility at Apple is accessibility at apple.com.
Good.
Now, the ADA turns 25 years this year. Can you tell us the good and the bad? To
Good and the bad. The good is that there have been so many significant advancements for people of all abilities as it relates to ensuring the equal access to physical buildings, and now we have to advance it to virtual buildings. I I really feel the ADA needs to take a stronger stand on virtual access, websites, and we also need to impress upon corporate America and the global corporate community the importance of creating accessible virtual environments, accessible intranet so we can go back to work. In the United States alone, I've seen a statistic that $4 billion a year are being spent through Social Security disability as payments to people who are blind simply because they can't go to work. Not that they're not intelligent enough, not that they don't have the right degrees or the right experiences. They just can't use the systems internally at an organization. So the ADA needs to get some more strength in, and we're stepping in that direction with the 504 and 503 under the Rehab Act. But I think we need to really start looking at the internet and the virtual world as a public forum with the idea that if I were to go to a building that had steps, a significant amount of stairs, would I be expected to carry a ramp on my back or railings that I would have to then construct in order to get into the building? And the answer is no. And that's exactly what some corporations that haven't really embraced accessibility and the usability of their websites, they expect us to be the ones who build those ramps and do all of these workarounds in order to get into the website as seamlessly as our sighted peers. So, on the 25th anniversary of the ADA, I would like to see the ADA move away from federal mandates and really focus in on the public aspects and the public offerings, such as websites that are storefronts and or tools that we can use to manage our finances, to manage our mortgages. It should not be as difficult, and it should not be an ongoing dialogue as long as it has been, given the technological brains that are out there. All of these technicians, all of these engineers, like Steve Jobs, there are plenty of brains out there who should get it's a simple programmatic code. So that's what I would hope for the ADA in its next 25 years, is to not take 15 or 16 years to phase in accessible kiosks or accessible websites, similar to what happened when we were trying to make physical environments and buildings accessible. just too much time. And with technologies, if it takes 15 years to phase it in 15 days, it's antiquated. So there's some improvements that need to be made. And it is a global beacon of hope that a lot of countries look toward. So the better we strengthen the ADA and the laws in this country to ensure equality for all people, the better impact it will have on the world.
Now, we have talked about the ADA. Now, let's talk in general. For people who are visually impaired or totally blind today in society, what is the biggest barrier we face in your view to get full inclusion and full acceptance and equality among everyone?
That's a loaded question. There are so many facets. There's not just one thing. Again, I think it goes back to a lack of empathy. Most people are sympathetic about people who are different. They aren't empathetic. And I think if we all take a measure of the people in our lives, we're going to find we are 1 degree of separation from somebody who has a print disability or somebody who has an invisible disability. And I think that by being empathetic and understanding that your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your aunt, your uncle, your grandmother, your grandfather, your daughter, your son, your niece, your nephew, your best friend may have a disability, it's all the more important for us as friends and family, and because of the people we love, to ensure that access is front and center. We also need to really stop labeling people based upon an antiquated perspective of being disabled. I don't like that. I don't like when people diss my ability. You know, the kids taught me, yo, Mr. Rizzi, don't diss me. That's like, don't disrespect me. So you disrespect me by calling me disabled because you don't know how to do things. Our normal is very different than anybody else's normal, and that's true regardless of whether you're blind or not. And I find that it goes back to the things I said too before about fear. I think that the quote-unquote able-bodied community tend to be fearful of catching blindness or deafness or paralysis, and also feel guilty that we have it and they can't fix it, and then also feel guilty that they don't have it, so they throw money at these charities that are supposed to empower us, when in essence they actually inhibit, in some instances, our independence as opposed to open doors to the same. I think we need to start speaking intelligently and articulately about the civil rights laws that are on the books for people with disabilities. And we need to start gaining the professional skills to help people see us, because right now they don't. There's intentional blinders on. People are intentionally blind to our ability and to our value because, again, we have generationally and traditionally, as a society, not given anybody any reason to see us differently. And I think we need to start standing up and taking our cues from Martin Luther King and Gandhi and get some more people out there who are blind, since it's about my community of blind, my blind community, and get some new leaders out there. You know, Helen Keller was the one who was the trailblazer, and then you had Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder. But again, that plays into those antiquated myths and misperceptions that all blind people are musicians, or they should be musicians. There are plenty of blind people out there that are successful hotel moguls, like Steve Wynn at the Wynn Casinos, Bellagio Hotel. Just they don't put it out there because there's a stigma. I have fun being blind. I enjoy my blindness as best as I can. That's not to say that I don't get frustrated, but when I was sighted, I got frustrated. Frustration is a part of everyday bump and grind. It helps us define our character, and it helps us to galvanize our focus to live a life that's rich and full.
How important do you think is for anyone in our society, not only people who are visually impaired or blind, but everybody, to be a self-advocate, to stand up and say, this needs to be changed, needs to be fixed, have to fight for it?
Um, I would not be anywhere today if it wasn't for my own self-advocacy efforts. But I found that I'm not the only one. And that's where understanding how to use your voice and when to collectively share your voice with others to use as a megaphone to really broadcast the injustice is critical. Most people, I think, aren't comfortable advocating for themselves, cited or not, because they figure it's just me, nobody's going to listen. And that has not, fortunately, thanks to God, has not been my experience. People listen, and it's all about how we deliver our communications. It's about how we embrace the dialogue that needs to happen, and it's also about how we make others feel comfortable enough to listen to what we're saying, because most people come with a pre-programmed response of, well, we don't do that. And we have to break through that very confidently and very calmly to get people to touch base with their empathetic side and realize they're 1 degree of separation from somebody who lives in our community, and then ask them, how would you feel if your mother couldn't do the same things I'm not able to do? And advocacy is a very important part of everything we do. I think education and mitigation above all else. And then if the people are that ignorant and that ridiculous that they can't be educated and they're not willing to mitigate the circumstances, that's when you ask Lady Justice to step in and decide which way things should go.
Albert, my final question has to do with technology. Can you tell us specifically what kind of technology do you use and how you use it?
You don't want to know. I am the worst technology person in the world. I use a JAWS screen reader. I'm very happy with my program. I use my iPhone. I use various digital recorders for when I'm at meetings and I want to record a lecture or something, and then I download that to an MP3 file. I really would love to be able to find a recorder that will take the audio and transcribe it into text. I think that would be a cool tool to have. But my technologies also include my guide dog. I have a new one now. His name is Vaughn. So we have 2 dogs running around right now. I'm open to technologies. There's a pen out there that I want to try and get that also as you're writing, it records the handwritten text. I think that's great for students. There are so many wonderful things out there that are very cutting edge, that really level the playing field. And I'm thinking about possibly in the next year or 2 creating a space on our website that's dedicated to the tools that we feel strongly about that are great options for people to use as they seek employment or go to school. So I'm still learning, Alvaro. I've only been blind now 9 years, so I always am cautious about claiming to know what I know. I'm more comfortable admitting what I don't know.
That's good. That's good. Okay, I have another question.
Go ahead.
But before that, is there any application for the iPhone that you love, that you recommend?
I happen to. I've been using. There's so many. I've been looking at your list. There's so many out there. What have I used recently that I like? Oh my goodness, you're putting me on the spot. I haven't even thought about that. I know I like the Bard mobile website. I can download books and I enjoy reading. And I'm very happy with my American Express app and my Chase app. I like to be able to manage my finances very much. And as I go through my list of apps, there is I don't have an answer for you right there, so I'm on the spot. I feel terrible.
No, 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 no. For our listeners, you should ask people that they say they're too many cell phones. So I do understand that for listeners, one of the most popular ones has been Tap Tap See.
I was gonna say that, but I have it, and I also like the color reader. I tend to like to know what colors I have around me. But I again, Tap Tap C is a very good one. I have that on, and there's also another one, and I forget the name of it at the moment. That is about different accessible websites and accessible restaurants and everything. Um, there are so many. There are really so many good ones. You would know more about those than I would, my friend.
Well, there is one called Able Road, but
That's the one I'm talking about. Able Road.
oh, okay. Oh, what can I say? But for our listeners and for Albert, there is one or two applications today for the iPhone that don't you are saying that you're looking for. So it can transcribe the audio. How good it is, I do not know at this point, but it is available.
Well, there's one that I want to find, and I tried using it. I would love to be able to. I know they're out there, but I haven't found a very user-friendly one. Is an app to send faxes from the iPhone. Take a picture of what I want to use, and then send it via fax. That's one I have to find. They have them out there, but they're not user-friendly. That's one of the things too that I'd love to be able to create a suite of accessible products, or at least recommend a suite of accessible products that business owners who are blind can use or disabled. And actually, Ted Drake and J.J. Medaw have partnered together. Ted is with Intuit, and J.J. is with Blind Bargains. They've got something called BizAbility. B as in boy, I as in iris, Z as in zebra, ability.org. And they list out some very impressive products that are accessible for the business owner, small business.
Oh, very good tip for our listeners to go and look
Mm-hmm.
at that. Okay, my final question may be controversial to some blind people, so I'm very interested in your take on this. As you know, GPS applications and GPS software and GPS devices are very popular.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, is it good or is it bad to be dependent on an application on your phone to get coordinated, or recommend people to get always mobility?
I don't think any tool that works to promote my independence is a bad one. With everybody, I mean, my partner drives and always uses the GPS. My mother to this day still uses maps. It's so wonderful. She taught me everything about directions and mapping skills that I am happy using both. I think choices are just that. They're individual to the person who makes them. If you feel a GPS is going to give you the security of knowing where you're going because you don't have a sense of direction, that even though the sun is shining in your face, you can't tell whether it's east or west, then a GPS is the right choice for you. I don't pass judgment on people's choices. Personally, I have used the GPS, and I find that I rarely use it. And I might want to use it more when I'm traveling. Like I was in Phoenix, and I didn't leave the hotel because I was there for a quick 3 or 4 day conference. But I probably would have wanted to use it in order to investigate an area that I've never been in before. I would much prefer to rely on a GPS in those instances than turn to somebody who I hope is understanding what I'm asking and pointing me in the right direction rather than assuming I want to go to the CVS or some bank as opposed to the hotel lobby. I happen to be a proponent of GPSs, but I use them infrequently.
Finally, Albert, how can people get in touch with you?
They can call you because you are the best conduit to get in touch with me. Now your phone's going to be ringing off the hook. No, you can write to me, Albert, at myblindspot.org, and visit our website, myblindspot.org, and sign up for our newsletters. Please keep an eye on what we're doing. If there's anything My Blind Spot can do better or different, and it's going to positively impact the community, we're here not only to educate, but we're also here to learn. So please feel free to write us, and there'll be other things coming down the pike, and we're excited about the opportunity to open doors for our community. And I thank you so much, Alvaro, for inviting me to speak with your audience today.
My pleasure, Albert. And for our listeners, remember that if you go to Facebook, you can like our page at Project Access for All. You can follow us on Twitter at Project Access for All. You can visit our website, www.projectaccessforall.org, and you can email us to be on the show to podcast@projectaccessforall.org. So, Alvaro from ABS and Project Access for All, thank you so much for listening to this wonderful interview, and have a wonderful day.
Project Access for All, the podcast, is a production of Art Beyond Sight in New York. For more about Art Beyond Sight and Project Access, visit this website, projectaccessforall.org. And you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and find Project Access on iTunes. Project Access. Everyone should be welcome, everywhere.